Hello, everyone. Just like our usual webinar stuff, despite the fact that we're started, I'm going to give a couple seconds here to make sure everyone can roll in before we really get started with today's webinar on managing a client with CloudRadial. Hosted by me, Director of Product Services here, while I sip my teddy bear mug. Very professional. Alrighty. I think give a courtesy minute, a little bit more, and we'll go.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Cool. All right, let's get launched. All right, so yes, today we're talking about how to manage a client or set of clients within CloudRadial. And if you guys are new to the series and or kind of looking for a little bit of a catch up, that's totally cool as well, because this is a good place to jump in. So I'd like to start off with what is CloudRadial, right? For those unfamiliar, those kind of jumping in, we are a SaaS solution for MSPs specifically, but really also Microsoft CSPs, really any kind of IT provider looking for some client portal and account management, right? And we integrate a lot of that into a singular platform to kind of give a really good experience to your clients while trying to leverage all the other tools you may be using, anything from your PSAs to backup tools to security, right? Just turning all of that client-facing and relevant for the purpose of helping you retain clients better, just have better relationships as a whole. So what it really boils down to is CloudRadial kind of serves as your base of operations, becomes a branded client portal, and we're trying to take everything and make it transparent. And that's kind of a recurring theme through every stage of what we do. So this is actually the third webinar in a series of 4. Today we're talking again about manage, where we're kind of examining the entirety of the structure of a client relationship, how it kind of works using CloudRadial as like your centerpiece, and putting everything into context. So previously we did land and onboard, which were really focused on how you can use this platform as a pre-sales tool. And then onboard being like, once you actually got the sale, how does it help you standardize and streamline your processes to make sure that you onboard clients cleanly? So I think this one's really cool. This manage one is probably my favorite one out of the 4, because this is what we usually find people coming to us for right off the bat, right? Because we're a client portal, because we do all these different things that are kind of intrinsically valued for a lot of these MSPs, when people come to us, they're looking for better ways to manage them as a whole. So again, many people that are going to be looking for us are probably looking for at this stage of the life cycle. So who is this webinar for specifically? We're kind of going to bundle it down to 4 kind of key demographics, if you will. One of them is the people that are looking for customized experience, right? A lot of times people nail a big client, or they want to just up their game and they want to make sure they have a good experience. CloudRadial is definitely built to do that. The other ones are those that are looking to build their QBR processes. So we'll talk about QBRs kind of more specifically, or TBRs, whatever you want to call them, but your kind of client meetings more in the next one, right? The next one's going to be the grow phase. That is your traditional, like, how do we kind of take a platform like this and deliver a QBR off of it? But we're going to start talking about how we're going to build that process now, so you're not having to scramble at the last minute. And then we're also going to talk about optimization of service delivery. CloudRadial, again, being a client portal, has a lot to do with ticketing. It's obviously much more than a ticketing portal, but there's a lot of tips and tricks in here to kind of supercharge that service delivery. And this is the phase where a lot of people kind of want to get it there. And then lastly, anyone who wants to sneak peek at how CloudRadial works, this will not be a PowerPoint demo. I say this a lot. I've said this in the past demos, or in the past webinars. Usually when we do webinars, it is hosted by Jeff, our CEO, and he talks a lot about like the theory and kind of the practice and the methodology and development. This is just a little bit of that, because I'm the kind of consultant / demo guy who does a lot of these things. We're going to go really into the real meat of CloudRadial. So shortly I'll be sharing my screen and we'll be running the rest of it as like a live example of stuff. So it would be a good thing to look at how it all works. And the next thing is the big question, right? So how can CloudRadial help you manage clients better, right? So what are we actually going to be doing? How does it all tie together? How can that fit into your current strategies without having to rewrite the book? There's obviously lots of different answers to that. So today's kind of main theme we're going to be circling around is scalability. Again, a lot of clients that come to us have the problem where you probably already have a way you're managing clients, and maybe that's good, maybe that's not good, maybe you're looking for a better way. So we're kind of going to start by going, okay, we want to familiarize our clients with the portal. We want to be able to be custom where we need to and boilerplate when we don't, so that way we can scale it up really good. And we want to be able to turn this thing into something that they actually appreciate. And that's the trick of CloudRadial. That's the big thing. It's not just about creating a portal and forcing people to use it and going, please use my portal. It's about creating something that is genuinely valuable and making it that shared resource. So this phase of manage is really critical, because ideally it's kind of a handoff point. Once you've landed them, once you've onboarded them, and kind of the dust settles, you've kind of got a long stretch of however long a contract is or however long your relationship is, where you kind of have set expectations. So turning your portal into something that is not just a slog to get to, but actually a genuinely beneficial thing is going to be the key. And again, we're going to look at the portal management off to them. The management of it is going to be really, really nice, because that's going to make it so you don't have to babysit their portal 24/7, but you can actually have them control their own stuff without breaking things. And that's going to be really useful. So we'll look at that as well. So another thing we want to make sure that we kind of iron out now is that we want to make every single part of the client experience work together, right? So the manage phase is where we're kind of pulling it all together, as witnessed by my Venn diagram there, where we're taking three main areas, right? The service desk, the account management, VCIO stuff, and then the portal by itself, and we're hybridizing that to create that cohesive client experience as a whole, right? And we're going to do that by really focusing on three distinct areas in here. As we'll see, we'll look at the preparation of the QBRs. We're going to look at the user reconciliation / ticketing part to really supercharge that service desk. And then we're going to look at the standalone portal features to make it kind of a helpful intranet, something they want to use. And that's all going to come together. So lastly, how are we actually helping you to do this? Obviously, we're giving this webinar. This is recorded. It will, of course, be sent out after. And the wrong date on there, that's okay. So we're going to be emailing the PDF guide on how to do all of this after the webinar is over. We're going to do a follow-up on Grow. I think I have a typo there. That's today. That's the current one. But I think, Safi, is that in 2 weeks by chance, the Grow one? We're keeping beat on that. I don't know if you knew that off the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head. I'll go to the website and look.
Typically, we do these. We have been doing these land onboard managed grows about 2 weeks apart. So chances are we're probably going to see that in 2 weeks, so early May. But yeah, so and any additional resources that we come up with are probably going to end up being added to our website and community anyways. So including the past LOMG guides. Again, my goal is not just to lecture you guys or spit a bunch of stuff and go copy me. It's really to kind of instill a proper strategy in this, make sure that we're following something that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, Ricky, May the 6th.
May the 6th, there we go.
Yep, May the 6th, same time, same place.
And I believe that's going to be also mentioned in the follow-up email after this, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll send out a link and you can register for that as well.
Cool. Yeah, and again, that one's going to be really kind of bringing it all together and talking about the QBR stuff. So it should be interesting for anyone looking for more of the account management features. But reminder too that past webinars that we've done on Land and Onboard are going to be found on YouTube. So you can kind of watch the series at your own time whenever you feel like. And the very, very last thing before we actually get started is making sure that we set the expectation that this is not necessarily a tutorial. Obviously, I'm going to be doing some stuff step by step and discussing how that affects the greater strategy, but I really heavily rely on our academy, which is our training program, to kind of get you out there and get you learning the nitty-gritty aspects. So I always plug the academy because that's something that will show you how to do a lot of the things I'm doing that I won't necessarily be walking you through literally every step by step. So make sure that you go to academy.cloudradial.com. If you already have a tenant, if you already have a trial, if you're already just checking this out, radials.io/training will show you how to get signed up. You can do all of that from within your tenant. No need to email anybody. It just is all set up by yourself, and then really, really heavily useful. So cool. I think that's a decent intro. Why don't we actually get started with some real stuff? So let's get out of this guy. And let's go over to our familiar LOMG tenant. So what I've been doing, for everyone that may or may not be familiar with this, is I actually have been using a test tenant that I spun up back during the first one for our LOMG purposes. And in this example, what we've been doing is we've been kind of using a tenant here to kind of mock through the different stages. So the first meeting we did, the first webinar, was the landing of clients. We talked about how to set it up for prospects, how to give them a tour, how to do all that. Last time we met, we did the onboarding. So we talked about all the different aspects to get them to kind of be familiar with the portal. We talked about the different tips and tricks to get them kind of warmed up. Something like the banner ads that we set up. We talked about, I believe, the client we picked specifically was Willoughby Council. We put them on a specific onboarding view for their feature set, which means that we chopped off some of these features to speak to that But again, today now we're fast forwarding to the point where the client has been onboarded, the expectations have been set, and now we're really focusing on okay, they're in the portal, they're your client now, and things are going on. What's going on? And we're going to continue probably using Willoughby Counsel since I had already started using them, but imagine that obviously this could be applicable to a number of clients. So the first thing that we want to focus on is kind of like what the client would expect or want at this stage. So once they're in the portal, once they've been onboarded, it's really going to come down to how do you keep them engaged in the portal. And that's a difficult task. For a lot of people that have tried portals, again, this is not a CloudRadial thing, this is just in general, you're going to find that a lot of times, like, you have to provide a lot of value to the clients or else you're going to see a steep drop off in your usage, right? CloudRadial is no exception to that. If you were to just offer Willoughby Counsel your portal, right, we're going to go ahead and pop into their portal with the impersonated admin. Again, you would get as much usage as you put into, but ultimately it's going to fall a little bit flat. So a little bit of a backup. When we did the other webinars, when we talked about it, we talked about how CloudRadial fundamentally is set up, right? We talked about the fact that CloudRadial is not intended to be a individually set up like client by client system, but rather we're trying to save a lot of time by making it scalable. So the way that we do that is we kind of try to build a baseline portal that's as customized as you see fit. Now, it already has a ton of sample content in here. If you were to click around your portal, whether it's your brand new one or your existing one, you're going to see a lot of the same stuff that I have on the screen right now. This tenant, I basically didn't add anything new. I only have the sample stuff. So a lot of these application launching links and the tickets and all that kind of stuff are pretty much bone stock with what you get. And all of this is derived from kind of a centralized template area where you can customize those templates, you can push them out, you can choose whether those go to, this ticket catalog goes to every client or you have a specific catalog for only certain clients. There's a whole slew of management stuff there. And that is specifically under our partner dropdown and our content area. So within this section, what we've done in previous webinars is we've taken all of the sample content in here, whether it was the articles, the assessments and whatnot, and we had basically chosen who gets them, right? So we talked about going, okay, minimize these for a little bit less of overload. All right, for example, the dashboard, that created a set of dashboards in CloudRadial, and I've currently told them to go to all companies and every user. So I've done a very basic deployment of CloudRadial in that it's bone stock, everyone gets the same stuff. And this is where a lot of you are going to find yourselves kind of right off of what we do for like our onboarding calls and whatnot. We'll start you off with something that won't embarrass you, right? You'll go put it in front of a prospect, everything, and you'll have something like this. Well, back to what I was saying earlier, this is probably not going to engage the clients for too long because the generic stuff will get it off the ground, right? You'll be able to give them the stuff you want and then the tickets and whatnot, but the thing that's going to keep them coming back is that customization, is speaking to their direct needs, is making sure that they actually see what they need to see. So even in the PDF that we're going to send out after, I have a few key suggestions of areas that I think make the most impact when customized, and I kind of have 3 of them in my mind. One of them is actually this area right here. So the applications is a very seemingly simple area, right? It's an area where you can put links to stuff. It's an area that I discussed last time in the onboard webinar, that you can put links to your own things. So if you already have like billing portals and stuff like that for them to make it easier to access in one spot, certainly applicable. But the real power of this is putting their own line of business apps, because that makes it so you're offering them something that is actually something they want to start their day with. And if you can do that, that's super sticky for keeping that client. So whenever I first deployed out Willoughby Counsel, I have all of the sample stuff. So where do I go next? And this is kind of some logistical discussions. Usually what I see a lot of our clients do is once they have a baseline thing and they're ready to move on, they will gather the line of business apps from the client. That may be in a questionnaire. They may even build out specific tickets within the portal, which we'll also discuss in a moment, to gather that information. But that's a super simple no-brainer thing that you can do, because all of a sudden what happens is you can ask them what they use. You can make sure that you can even make that part of your onboarding process. And as you throw on those applications in here, you can add them just like I did. And when you add stuff like I just did, where I just clicked on the add button from within Willoughby Counsel, I'm creating basically customized one-offs just for them. So if hypothetically, right, they needed to have an app to Google because they're big Google users, and I wanted to have, Google search, I can do so. And a lot of times we're going to get questions, because a lot of people do, right, is what is this actually meant for? Now, by themselves, the applications are literally just launches to online things. So in this case, I'm going to do a Google search launch. That's cool. can this open desktop applications? Can I make it open outlook.exe, for example, because that'd be pretty cool. Kind of. The cloud-based version of CloudRadial, which is obviously what I do the webinars in, can only open links to stuff. But if we do show more options on these, there's also the option to do some interesting things, because obviously the chief concern for people is to try to keep them in the portal, make sure they get as much usage out of it. And that's really part of the managed spirit, is making sure that you're really focusing on the value you deliver to the clients. So some of the stuff you can do in here, for example, is to open it in an iframe with the portal. Mileage may vary here because a lot of sites don't allow iframing, but those that do, works pretty slick because they can open up apps directly within here. And you're going to see that when I hit this button, there's also an additional area that says desktop application URL. This is because a lot of times our clients will go through and they'll put links to say Outlook, OWA online, but they want it to open outlook.exe on the computer. So you can actually put the file path here. And what CloudRadial is going to do is it's going to read this one on the online version and this one if they're running CloudRadial from the desktop application. So it can basically do two different behaviors from one app. But more so than going down the nitty-gritty of the technicalities, this type of thinking is kind of the spirit of manage, right? When we go through and we start customizing, oh well, I want to make it look nice. I'm going to do an icon for Google, and maybe they use Citrix. I want to throw some Citrix stuff on there and all that. You start to end up with something that is now actually genuinely customized to them. Obviously, they can click on it, they can go to wherever they want, and we're kind of good to go. So this is a pretty easy no-brainer area because all it requires is you to gather the line of business apps and serve them up. Some clients may not have anything, right? You might offer up a general thing, for example, my office apps, and that's fine. Other clients may have a kind of a slew of other things. Back to what I said earlier, right? CloudRadial has a central repository of things. So it's up to you on how you want to distribute that content, whether you want to put it from back here and send it just to that one client, or whether you want to do what I just did, where you really just leave this content area as like the templates of stuff that they get provisioned initially, and then you just finish off that company by just adding stuff like locally just for them, right? Either are valid. CloudRadial being a sandbox-like tool, there's like 50 different ways to skin the cat, so it's really the same thing. And that's where the Academy comes in really handy because it's showing you all the different ways you could do this. But the idea is the same, right? We're just customizing the portal to the client's needs. So this is a really powerful one. The next one I find that is really valuable, we get a lot of questions from our partners on how they can monetize the portal. Because one of the things is that giving a client portal is really cool, but how do they potentially use this as an upsell item, or could they even charge more? And the answer is, yeah, for sure. You're delivering a huge value here, not just with links that could be a bookmarks bar, but there's tons of stuff in here, right? Because quick reminder / flash of the features, right? CloudRadial has things like inbuilt messaging, KBs built in, right? Customizable ticket forms. The one I find that sticks the best with clients is going to be the courses under the university. So reminder that CloudRadial functionally has a built-in LMS into it, right? It's light, it doesn't have a lot of the features as a full-blown LMS, but hey, for something included within your portal, it's pretty good. So when we first look at them, same idea as the applications. You're going to start off with a whole bunch of sample content that you can do whatever you want with, right? The clients can take this, they can do whatever, and that's cool by itself. But rather than just serving something, this is a massive opportunity for you to use as an upsell or at least a stickiness point with the clients, because here is where you can go in and go, hey, I've given you all this stuff. Would you like to build your own courses? And this is really valuable. I see a lot of people that put in more of like, your especially with kind of like construction companies and whatnot, they do like a lot of OSHA work. So they have lots of specific stuff. I had a use case the other day where somebody had warehouse training stuff and they wanted to specifically on how to operate the forklift, and they needed a place to host these trainings. And this is a fantastic place to do so, right? Because LMSs are usually prohibitively expensive. So they can come into their portal and they can throw together a course really easily. They throw in a splash page, they do lessons. So you can do, whether they have them hosted on, YouTube or Vimeo or whatever, they can throw them right in here. They can do text-based stuff, and they can even do quizzes and whatnot on these. So obviously there's quite a healthy level of customization here that they can do, but the main point is that this is something that is mega powerful for clients. So this is something that you can, again, spend your time delivering. If you guys have custom courses that you want to put for your clients, you're certainly welcome to do so, but unlocking that power for the clients is absolutely powerful. I think probably the most powerful of all of the ones that we see in here. Another one that I think we're going to go into briefly, because this is a whole thing, right? And obviously I want to be cognizant of time, is the tickets. So ticketing wise and even service requests, CloudRadial, just from a brief touch on our methodology, we've split apart the problem reports from the service requests. So the problem reports are what most people think of when they think of incident reports or trouble tickets or anything like that, wherein the user clicks on the drop down, they click on the ticket, and then they fill this out, and then this goes off to a source. Now, most of the time, people use CloudRadial with a PSA, right? So whether that's our currently supported Synchro, Autotask, Kaseya, ConnectWise, those all work, but we can even have it work via email. So you can even have this send it to your support at email if you like. But the idea is pretty, relatively simple. I think the cool thing that we do is that we split this apart, right? Our incidents from our service requests so that you can have a different methodology. So these submit tickets just the same exact way, but these are meant to be more like, kind of a shopping experience where you can put in order a laptop and provisioning and make them choose different laptop models or whatever it may be. And you have it, kind of fundamentally change their perception of the portal where it's not just a problem portal, but it's a training portal, it's a knowledge-based portal, it's an order portal, everything in one, right? So I bring this up because this is also a very common place to start tweaking during the manage phase, because once you've served them up some kind of version of a baseline catalog, like we're seeing, so Willoughby Council is serving the one that is directly reading from that content area, you may find that these people use some system that you weren't anticipating before, or maybe they have a specific need that just nobody else does. So this is also a very popular area that once you kind of run with the stock stuff, coming in and adding a custom ticket for them and kind of tweaking that to their needs is very, very common. This in general, I guess I want to discuss this for a moment, is very common to add net new things, right? So you see I have a core catalog of stuff. I click on add, I can add something new on top of that. So if I were to create a brand new dropdown, let's say, a little test action, my favorite, here it is, and it works just fine, same idea. They would be able to submit that, it works the same as everything else. Something very common that's going to happen to a lot of you is that sometimes you don't need to create brand new things. Sometimes you need to break off from the templates. So whether that's the applications, the courses, or whatever, that's actually built to be done in CloudRadial. I mean, we kind of anticipated this. Here's an example. So let's say I go to the software list and they can't log in, right? We're just going to use a crappy example, but an example. Rather than having to rebuild this to fit their specific need that they can't log into one specific app, what we can do from these tickets as a global administrator like I am and like you guys will be, is you can actually edit tickets directly. And a lot of times if you're playing around with CloudRadial and you try to do that, you're going to get hit with this message that says, hey, subscribe to content. It's important to know this is not a bad thing. It just comes with some consequences that we want to discuss and make sure you're aware of even right now. Because again, you're going to run into this when you're doing the management stuff. Basically what this message says, it's warning you saying, hey, this template, right, this ticket in this case, but it would work with KBs and courses, you're going to get the same message on any piece you try to edit. It's going to be coming from content, right? It comes from the template, and it's saying, do you want to break it off? And breaking it off is not a bad thing. You say, yeah, okay, sure. Now what you can do is you can edit this direct thing and you can do whatever. So if I make a change to this and hit submit, it is now broken off the template. So it's something I advise some caution with, but again, potentially very useful for. That means you don't have to create a brand new thing, but you can break it off the template and do a little bit of customizations there. So that can be helpful to save you time so you're not having to reinvent the wheel for people. Where this comes in most practically for a lot of people is stuff like the onboarding, offboarding forms. We currently have one of those under our service request as part of our sample content. And those are ones that are notoriously difficult / different from client to client, right? We have onboard, offboard, and we have a lot of clients that have different processes for each one. So when I click on any one of these guys, it would be the same thing, right? We may want to reinvent the wheel for, I know it's desktop monitors, but we want to reinvent the wheel. Not really, we just want to change a little bit of it and make it work nicely for them. So we're going to come back to tickets here in a sec, because we're going to talk about that distinctly with the service desk part of the conversation. But right now, I'm just showing you a couple different areas that we want to be able to customize. So again, I really strongly recommend the applications. I think that's a really strong, easy one. The tickets and the service requests are really good. The university courses, of course, are also very effective. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is the knowledge base articles. So CloudRadial having a built-in knowledge base is obviously intended to be a quick area of access that is shared between yourselves and the client. And again, you can of course put stuff that you see fit, right? So example, this is part of the sample content, getting started with the portal, but this is another great area where the client may want to put in, for example, their own, I don't know, employee handbook or their own processes for how to do something, and having that centralized location for them you can have them add that in there. And the cool thing about these is that they can write that stuff in. They can even pull it from a web page URL. As long as it's public facing, we can grab it. It'll pull that into CloudRadial for them. And they can also attach files to these KBs. So if they have a specific thing that they want to give access to really quickly, you can do that for sure. So aside from the content creation, something else that happens very commonly at the manage phase is user reconciliation or count reviews. And that's something that I wanted to kind of break off and talk about because I get a lot of questions about this. Usually that's one of the first things that people see, because I think logistically, like I was saying at the very beginning of this webinar, when we catch people and they kind of start getting interested in CloudRadial, it's not that common for us to reach someone that has never had a client before and they're looking to get started. It happens, but for the most part, people that come to CloudRadial already have a lot of clients and they're looking to make their management of them better. They're looking to make sure it's scalable and it kind of works in the future and currently. So one of the things that happens a lot is these darn users, and users are super hard to keep track of, especially if you've got like stuff like Office and the PSA and there's mismatches and you charge by seat. And how do you realize who's real and who's not? And obviously that's a huge question. But CloudRadial, I think, can help make that a little bit better and more visible. So in this case, in Willoughby Council, I want to see the user list of where we are pulling them from, but also just in general, who am I pulling in the first place? The users within a given company in CloudRadial are stored under the usage area and the user list. So in this case, I've got my Willoughby Council of all my Willoughbys. These are fake people, thank God. Look at all those Willoughbys. And when we look at them, basically we have the 6, and I got their names and their emails and whatnot. And I have these 2 columns, which are very important. And again, this becomes one of the most useful things after you started to kind of walk through the client's portal, after you've onboarded them and whatnot, because CloudRadial will show you where it's pulling them from. Now, in this case, it's very simple. I only have Willoughby Council connected to my PSA. So these are pulling straight from, in this case, Synchro. And it's telling me that hey, all 6 are coming from Synchro. So IT provider means the PSA. And right next to that, there's a column for IT source, basically meaning, are they also found in the PSA? Obviously they are. They're pulling from the PSA for sure. What I wanted to show, I wanted to break from this demo tenant for a moment and go to our demo account that we usually give demos on to show a more realistic thing that happens to a lot of you. So let's go over here. So in my demo account in digital efforts, I'm going to look at one like LOMG sync example that is going to be super common. Now, in this case, whenever you add a client to CloudRadial, it should be very easy. And again, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip all the different details of how we add them because we covered that in land and onboard. But generally speaking, the things that there is to know is that when you go to add a company in CloudRadial to get them to actually be able to log in and whatnot, we need a couple of different bits of information because we're not a sync source. So we need the PSA identifier and or the Office identifier to actually pull their contact info. So technically speaking, we have 2 sync sources, and that's exactly what's happening for my LOMG sync example. You can see here that I've got the identifier from the PSA coming in, and I've also got an Office identifier. So again, a lot of clients are going to end up running into this problem where they have 2 different sync sources. So when I pop into LOMG sync example and go check them out, what's going to happen? Well, CloudRadial is going to be pulling users from both. So in this example, I have 3 people. I have Jeff, I have Mr. Man, and I have Safi. And when we look over at the sources, this is where things get a little bit more complicated, right? You start to see that this is CloudRadial pulling them in, and it's starting to spit out different information. Jeff is coming from Office, not the PSA. And the fact that he has a dash here means that he is not found in the PSA. So functionally, we have an Office-only contact. Mr. Man, in this case, is coming just from ConnectWise. Safi's the same as Jeff. So this is the kind of stuff that is very, very common for people when they first start up in CloudRadial because they're excited, they want to use the portal, they like all the benefits, they want to do the customization, but they usually hit the roadblock when it comes to users. And that's something I really want to address because a lot of times this is a problem for them, you know, keeping this clean with their users. How do you share that information? And again, the management phase is part of a really good one where you want to be able to reconcile it and show them who you're pulling and why, right? So it's very common that people start to kind of do some exclusions because CloudRadial ultimately is not all that intelligent as far as how we know who a real user is. It's not like there's any specific tricks to it. For the PSAs, all we're looking to do is we're looking to see if they're active. If they're an active contact, then we don't know the difference, so bring them on in. With Office, it's a little bit more nuanced. By default, what's happening is if they're active and they have a license attached to them, we'll be bringing them in. And that's the case for all these people. Still, this kind of can cause a mess, right? Because again, you might have a bunch of info ads coming in, you might have a bunch of deactivated people that are in your PSA as junk context that you forgot to deactivate, and CloudRadial will show you all that dirty laundry. So there's kind of a part of like, I guess the best way to do it is homework whenever you first put someone in there, because obviously we need clear visibility on who should be in the portal. Now there's lots of ways to fix this up. So we should talk about exclusions as well. So right off the bat, if I wanted to exclude somebody and say, oh, you know what, Mr. Man shouldn't even be in here in the first place. He left 6 months ago. That's not bad at all. Within a given company, there's going to be this little edit all pencil within the users, and we can click on a person or multiple people and just exclude them, saying get out of the portal, right? Again, CloudRadial not being a sync source is probably one of the easiest tools ever to manipulate and work with, because what's happening is we're not deleting them out of Office. We're not deleting them out of the PSA. We're just saying get out of CloudRadial. So there's really nothing you can do in here that's going to cause a giant mess in either system to, you know, where did my users go? Not really. I'm going to do this anyways to show you what happens. So theoretically, oh yeah, Mr. Man's out of here. He shouldn't be in here. And you've got a cleaner company in CloudRadial. If you want to bring them back, that's not a big deal at all. If I realize I made a mistake, I can click on my company from my client list. And within here, there is actually a tab for exclusion. So I can see, oops, I've accidentally removed the CEO, Mr. Man. Let's bring him back. Remove that rule. So it's something you definitely want to play with. This brings me to something else that is super common. Now, this is kind of a joke because it's 3 people companies, and it's obviously super easy to do manually. But a lot of people I work with have tens, hundreds, and even 1,000 people companies, and that gets a lot hairier. So from this same screen I was in, right, again, I clicked on the company and I clicked on the exclusions tab. Rather than doing it manually, you can also do exclusion rules. So this is going to come in mega handy for a lot of people, because this is where you can do stuff by wildcard patterns as well, right? If you got a bunch of people that come from a domain that shouldn't be in there, right? Get the Gmails out of there, get the on Microsoft's out there, whatever, you can kick them out. You can get out the info ads, you can get out these people. And you can do this on a company by company basis to ensure that your user count is as accurate as possible. And again, this is something that's very common during this manage phase. So you can do this. I showed you kind of the base example is where you can do it one by one, right? I can go in and I can click on one person and go, get them out of here. And I can shift click and multi-select, but pretty manual. I can do the exclusion rule on a company basis. And I can also do a global exclusion rule. Under partner and settings, if you know for sure that you don't want any info ads or admins at anywhere in the portal, under the configuration column over here, there's a spot for exclusions, and you can set those rules up with the same wildcard pattern. So that works out pretty well. So what I've just done is I've brought my Mr. Man back, and I'll show you probably one of the healthiest ways to keep everything healthy. Weird word. Best ways to keep everything kind of clean. So once you've kind of decided who should be in there, who shouldn't be in there, a challenge that a lot of MSPs have, and something that CloudRadial can actually help with, is the ability to sync to the PSA and keep everything kind of in sync for you. The example here is something very common, right? It's always been a challenge for the team to keep, you know, the users up to date, because they have to add it from one source, they have to add it to another. And now some of you may already have tools that can do this, but CloudRadial has kind of a hidden function that serves to do just that. So the example in this case is I have Jeff and Safi, and we are paying from them, you know, in Office, they're there, but they're not in the PSA. And I want to make sure that everyone is in there and everyone's kind of matched up. So I don't have to go back and retroactively remember to add Jeff and Safi in there. What CloudRadial can do is if I click on the company from the client list, so in this case, my LOMG sync example, and I edit their settings, we're going to see a really helpful option. So by default, CloudRadial doesn't do this, and that's on purpose to not create a mess if you're not expecting it, right? So we popped in the identifiers and everything. Now, most people will go down and kind of match them in, it'll be fine. But I want to keep a closer eye on this section right here, because these are the specific sync toggles of what CloudRadial is doing. And for the most part, this is the super baseline default that people want, right? We have 2 sync sources, bring them in. If they're deactivated, don't bring them in, the usual kind of stuff you would expect. What I'm talking about is this one right here. PSA/Office 365 synchronization. So this can save people a lot of time when used correctly. And if I flip this on, what it's saying is like, hey, would you like me to create the PSA contact from Office users? So if I flip that on, basically what it's going to do is it's going to create a contact in the PSA if you create them in Office automatically for you, and it's going to mark them as deactivated if you delete them out of Office 365. So it tries to keep things in sync for you. To prove how this works and that it's pretty easy, it's pretty sensical, I have ConnectWise pulled up right here. I currently have my LOMG sync example company, and I currently have the one contact. So Jeff and Safi are not in here at all, right? We just have the one guy that's just chilling in here. Cool. There he is, Mr. Man. Now, what I'll do is I'll show you, and this works with all the PSAs we work with, right? So you flip that on, you go, yes, I want to keep that in line. It's recommended to do this after you've done that initial cleanup, because if you don't, what would have happened, right? And hypothetically, this is fine. You might have a bunch of crap in Office 365 that you don't want showing up in your PSA. And CloudRadial is currently going to go in and create Jeff because he's not found in the PSA. It's going to create Safi, she's not found in the PSA. So we're going to do this by kicking off a manual sync. Ordinarily, because CloudRadial syncs once a day, it would have taken care of this tomorrow, but obviously I'm on a webinar, so I want to make sure this is good. And this is going to take care of that for you. And again, back to the greater context of the management phase, this user reconciliation, making sure that everything's up to date is really, really handy because this keeps the user counts clean and keeps the client conversation going within their portal. So it just finished the sync. So what you'll find is that when I hit refresh, what I'm looking for is that they have been added in there. So you see now that it says yes. This is the ideal thing of user syncs in CloudRadial, because what this means is that Jeff has been found in Office, he has been found in the PSA, and he has been merged together as one contact in CloudRadial. Back into ConnectWise, when I refresh this and I hit enter again, let's do a little search. There we go. And Jeff has been added in here. And it also, I believe, I haven't done this research in a while, I should bring over some stuff from Office 365. So I brought over his title and cell and all that kind of stuff too. So this can be really, really, really handy for keeping user counts clean and whatnot. So that's a kind of a highlight part to the manage part I wanted to discuss really quickly. All right, so back to Willoughby Council. Yeah, we're good there. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the last kind of cherry on top of this, which is I showed you guys some, the gist of how to do this, where if you go to impersonate admin, you can go add your tickets and add your things and there. But a lot of times what people want to do is they want to be able to give clients the ability to do this, because that, again, turns it into a sticky thing for them. So what I can do within CloudRadial is within the user list. So right now I'm back in Willoughby. I can pick Austin, Willoughby, or whoever. I can edit a specific company, and I can change their user access, right? So this is how I delegate who is an admin and who is not an admin in CloudRadial. And that's a whole thing. But we don't even need to talk about this. Right now, we're talking just about this one right here, the sub option beneath it. Functionally, what CloudRadial has is basically a view-only user, a view-only limited access user, and a view-only administrator. But if you flip this button, it turns them into an editing person. And you can see the language doesn't just say allow to edit, right? It says allow editing non-subscription content. Oh, wait a sec, we talked about that. So what this means, let's do this. Let's say, yes, Austin has the ability to do that, is now I've made an editing user. So what does Austin have the ability to do? When you make someone an editing user, and this is obviously something you'd want to discuss, they now have the power to go and create stuff just like you do. So you can flip someone's ability on, and Austin can go create KB articles for his company. So most commonly done for points of contacts. The reason it's really cool, and the reason it says allow editing non-subscription content, it means that they cannot touch your templated stuff. When you deploy out that first original portal, they're not going to be able to edit and delete all your stuff, right? So which is very key. For example, you're getting started with the portal or your help document. If he tries to edit it, it's going to give him this thing going, hey, it's coming from a subscription. Now, obviously, the user would have no idea what that means, but basically it means don't touch my stuff, right? So it's a safe way to push your stuff out there, to give them the freedom to create their own stuff without breaking any of your stuff. So they should get that message both when they delete and when they hit edit on it. So just know that that's the power, and that's something that is mega useful for a lot of people, because again, that kind of turns the onus off of you. Eventually, you're going to start putting in stuff, and then you may want to turn that off and say, okay, you guys manage your own stuff, and that's how you do it. Flip of a button. So cool stuff. All right, so let's actually change gears here for a sec, and let's talk about the next part. So that was a very big chunk of that, the Venn diagram. That's the portal part that I wanted to spend the brunt of the time on it. The next part.
Before you jump, I want to ask you a question. So Norbert asked, can you update the content information, the phone number in either 365 and the PSA, and have that change sync to the other?
So
it's really more of the contact information. So it's if you update the contact info, like the phone number, in either 365 or the PSA, will that change sync over to the other?
It flows downward. It goes Office to PSA. If you do PSA, we don't have write permissions back up to Office.
Okay, gotcha.
The other thing too that's a really good question, because again, I don't want to go too technical, but for Norbert, I think you know what I'm going to be talking about here. Is one of the things that CloudRadial can do, obviously, is rather than having to sign into each company with like an admin account and get access, there's a script you can run that creates an application that gives us all the access we need to pull in your Microsoft tenants. So this is the script. It's found under partner setup, and it's commonly one of the first things people do. So if you look at this, CloudRadial, when it comes to Office 365, again, does not have write permissions. If you take a look at the permission list, it shows you everything we need, and it's just for the sake of showing that information in there. One of the things that we do have, and it's one of the very few write ones, is this user read write all. Because what you can do is when a user goes into CloudRadial and they can click on their profile, if they choose to edit it, which I'm a fake person, so I can't edit mine. Here's a real person. This will actually write back to Office, and therefore it'll write back to the PSA. So it's kind of a weird thing, because we can get it from Office to the PSA, we can get it from CloudRadial to the PSA, but we can't, if you update stuff in the PSA, it won't write back. So that's the full explanation.
Thank you.
For sure. Good question, really smart. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is the service desk, because they often would really start to do their work here. Again, I talk to a lot of people and they want to get their stuff spun up fast. So usually a lot of people will take a look at the sample catalog of tickets that we have, and they'll be mostly okay with it, because this was actually developed with a bunch of MSPs' help. So it's not something we arbitrarily decided would be cool. It's just been an amalgamation of the most common issues that users have. And of course, you have full freedom to add and whatnot. And most of the time, when people are looking to get up and running, they're not concerned with building 1,000 different forms, but CloudRadial's form builder is extremely robust. So if you were to take a look at this, right, whether you do it from content or as a one-off, when you start looking at the settings we do, you have pretty much full control over the drop downs, the subjects, and the questions and whatnot. And if I were doing this webinar, 2 webinars ago where I'm saying land, I even think I did this. I said, hey, push it out there, it works. CloudRadial is designed to work off the bat. But in this phase, right, this is where the service desk might go, well, hold on, if we have full control and where people are actually putting them, doesn't it benefit you to put as much detail as possible in here? Kind of does, because that makes it so your time to resolution is shorter and shorter and shorter. So that's kind of like a smart thing for the portal, right? The more you know the client, the faster you can resolve their tickets, because you can kind of guesstimate things better and you can put the stuff in the right boards and queues and whatever. How that works is we're going to kind of ignore the form building part, because again, this is completely subjective to what you need. This is again very, very strong. So text and checkboxes and all that kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is all these other settings that I typically don't talk about. So the 2 things needed for CloudRadial to work are obviously the questions you asked in the form and the routing. So where does it go, right? And again, in this case, it's synchro, but generally speaking, it's going to be done in a way that won't fail when you first try it. So even if you don't know what you're doing, you don't click on any of this and just build a form and hit submit, it should work. But if you look, this is where this manage phase is where a lot of people like to start tweaking these settings, right? They start changing, well, maybe I want to change the status. Maybe I want to change the type and priority. Depending on the PSA, you'll see different options. So synchros like this, ConnectWise and AutoTask obviously are, I think, more intricate as far as their board structures and all that goes. So if you look at this, again, the demo account that we have hooked up, connected to ConnectWise, you're going to see that you have the choice of the board and the status and the priority, and even down to the type and subtype and all that kind of stuff. So again, very common that when you're first setting up the portal for clients, you go basic, right? You give it the bare necessities. I needed to have a general destination with a general status, but people always circle back to this after a while and start going, well, maybe I want to have a subtype on this and really come in clean, because that helps to reduce the triage work that needs to happen on the service person side. So this is where CloudRadial starts to really help streamline the service desk efficiency. And what you'll see, regardless of what PSA you use, and we use these all over the place, are these tokens. So what you're seeing right here in the ConnectWise connected tenant is we have this at default board, at default status, at default priority. And even in my synchro tenant here, I have at default status, at default priority. What's happening here is that these are token values. So they're not actually pointing to a default status called at default status. They're getting replaced by something. So for any of you that have spun this up and are wondering if you've ever gotten ticket failures and whatnot, it's important to kind of take a look at the tokens. Every single form that you see has a little link off to tokens over here, and it'll show you exactly what those tokens are getting replaced with. So in this case, in my synchro tenant, my default priority is 2 normal, my default status is new. And we're big fans of using these because with tokens, especially, again, like in my ConnectWise one, you're going to find that it's extremely tedious to have to go back and touch 30 tickets over and over again, right? To have to go, oh, I got to change them all from professional services to help desk or whatever. So it's really nice to become pre-filled with them, because if you change your mind on the fly, you go, hey, my new default value for default board is now help desk. Changed, right? You don't have to touch 80 tickets. Strictly, they're not actually necessary. I mean, you can create your own and build those as much as you want. We really recommend that, but you can ultimately just write the actual board and stuff names directly in here. It'll work just fine. But I bring this up for this conversation because, again, a lot of the stuff in here ends up being customized. So this is something that you may want to go back and determine, well, you know what ticket they're going to submit, so why not pre-fill the type and subtype, or the type and priority, or whatever your PSA allows, right? Really fill that out. The same thing with all these sub options beneath here. When you start kind of getting deeper into it, yeah, you can submit a ticket from CloudRadial to the PSA, but what else can you do? How else can this help you work? And this is where you want to start getting your kind of gears turning. Do you want to set up a webhook to your Teams or Slack so you're notified in there when a ticket comes in? That might boost response time, right? Do you want to start sending off webhooks to Flow and JSON for automation stuff? Ooh, that's pretty cool. The way that these work, and I'll keep this mega brief, is within the questions, other than just the form builder, you can actually go down to the bottom and there's a little section for show more options where you can give specific questions JSON field IDs, which means that you can ostensibly start triggering off some pretty rad automation stuff over to like a Zapier or like a Microsoft Flow or whatever, right? Because you can give it commands and have that spit out to there. So these types of gems are stuff that you absolutely do not need when you're first starting it off. But if you had something in mind that you wanted something to get provisioned and make it all more efficient, this stuff is worth exploring. Same thing with these other tabs up top, right? Again, the only two that are necessary to make the ticket work are questions and routing. And theoretically, if your tokens are okay, you don't even need to touch routing. It should work out of the box. But during the manage phase, you might want to go back and do stuff like confirmation messages, right? That might be cool. So after they submit the ticket, this will pop up like a blade panel within CloudRadial and show them the message. At worst, and I say worst with air quotes because it's not bad at all, you could have it say, hey, thanks for submitting a ticket. We'll get right on that. At best, you can do cool stuff like maybe offer follow-up suggestions or link off to help articles and stuff. Say, in the meantime, here's how we can help, right? Check out this article on how to set up Outlook on your phone. Again, you know the ticket they're submitting, so why not put in some self-help there and try to reduce that ticket submission time and maybe even fix their issue before you get to it. And we even have an integration with TimeZest, which I believe we're having a webinar with them soon, where you can actually put the TimeZest thing directly in here. So once they submit the ticket, they can schedule to meet with you directly from the confirmation tab. So this is another one that is optional, but potentially mega useful. And it would typically be one I would see set up during this management phase where people are tweaking this a little bit more. Groups is not really worth discussing right now in depth. This is kind of sensible. It just means that you can, of course, choose which level of user can see this ticket. So that's fine. Checklist and script are really interesting. So I'm not exactly sure on Synchro. I will say for ConnectWise, because I know that ConnectWise has this, but I may be wrong on Synchro, so who knows. But within the checklist module, the idea from us was that what if you could give the list of tasks to the technician from the tool? Again, we know exactly what they're submitting, so why not be able to optimize that? The big goal here would be to make the most new person on the service team as senior as the most senior person, because you're, again, standardizing the process for troubleshooting and handling the ticket. So if that can come directly from the ticket itself, someone put a VPN ticket that they can't connect, and then the technician just reads the steps to resolve, then that could scale up very quickly, right? So these are the types of things that you can take advantage of that will be mega, mega helpful. And lastly, there's also the script angle. So in the script area, CloudRadial can build and generate a PowerShell script for you. It currently does not run it, because obviously that's scary that things run PowerShell scripts by themselves. But you can build a PowerShell script directly in here, and it'll actually be attached to the ticket. So same idea as the checklist to a degree. The idea is that you can kind of generate some values. If you know you can whip up a script using some variables that would help solve the issue, you can write them in there, and then the ticket's going to come in with that script attached, and the technician runs it, and we're good to go. So this is obviously a lightning fast explanation, but more so just an idea of like, hey, you don't have to just use tickets to say point A to point B, right? These additional features are the things that during the management phase, you kind of go deeper. You go, okay, all of a sudden it doesn't just go to the default board, it goes to the specific board, it goes to the sales board. That one goes to the network team, that one goes to this team, that goes to this team. And that just helps reduce and reduce and reduce the time to resolution. So that means you're getting more efficient as time goes on. Same thing with all these things. That's just the core concept. So to that end, let's switch gears for the final one. So the service team is going to get a lot of play out of these two things, right? The service requests and the problem reports are kind of a hybrid of service team and maybe sales team, right? These are, of course, are basically a carbon copy. We're not going to have a conversation over these because they have the exact same settings, so same thing. But for the account managers, let's swap over there, right? They were the third part of the Venn diagram. There's something else going on that we've been building up kind of in secret for the past 3 webinars, which is whenever they first landed the client, right? Whenever whoever had that first conversation, inevitably there was some kind of, I suppose we built the premise that they would be promising transparency, they would be promising efficiency and customization, and we really are delivering on all that, right? We're not only showing them everything that we do within their portal, but we're also making it so they can add their own flair and they can make this more and more useful. Now, where the account managers come into this stage is they want to start thinking about the next stage, which is the growth, which is the QBR, which is how can we take all of this stuff, just this living, breathing mass of information, and make it an actionable thing. And last time on Onboard, we talked about setting up a lot of different things in here. So we spent the brunt of this webinar, or at least I did, right, talking about a lot of the stuff that is more subjective, right? What KBs do they need and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to switch my attention down to the second half of CloudRadial, which is more of the reporting part. So again, talking about like agent deployment of stuff, talking about putting stuff on the computers, monitoring it, putting in reports from different services, and so on and so forth. So when we get in here, right, this theoretically has been going on every day. So these agents that we had from CloudRadial are gathering the data and showcasing it. And right now we haven't really had time to act on this. Sure, it's been in here, right? And maybe it's visible to the client, but they don't quite yet know what to do with it. But we do, right? So as an account manager, I now have the ability to start thinking and standardizing how I'm going to be delivering my recommendations. So I've gotten the endpoints in here, and that may be fine. And I've gotten the licenses all cleaned up now. I got the user count cleaned up, so I know exactly who's in here. And we can have a conversation about that. I've gotten maybe my policies set up. So I don't know, we've talked about this very much, but these are the rules that apply against the agent data. So rather than just showing people the raw endpoint information, making them dig for it, right? What the policies are doing is they're taking all these things and running them against a set of rules. So do you have encryption? Do you have the right AV? Do you have this? Do you have that? And it's been tallying this every single day for me. So now I have a place that I can start to keep an eye on the issues we need to have. So before I meet with them for the QBR, maybe I want to take care of the pesky things that it should be whatever. For example, if I go to security, I go, well, you know what, Ricky doesn't have an AV. So in this case, we probably want to put that on the machine because I don't want to look bad when I do the QBR. And if, you know, maybe this is a misread or there's a reason why he doesn't need it, that's okay. I can say, hey, we're going to toggle the exception for him. So this is the time, again, before you get to the QBR, where you kind of do your sweep of the account and make sure that what you see and what they see is amenable. You have an answer for it. It's all in one place, so it shouldn't be this huge sludge to get through all of it, but it's in there. So we've got the reports going. We've got some infrastructure data going. We've got your report archives, which we talked about, I believe, during both webinars last time, but quick recap. This is the section where you can build folders to hold reports of any type. Right, CloudRadial, not living in a bubble, starts to become a place where you can start to make that your central hub of client experience. So whether it's the backup reports, whether it's AV reports, whether it's another VCIO tools reports, that's all okay, because again, CloudRadial is your center focus for your client. So maybe I want to throw in some backup reports in here. And you can set retention rules on them, and you can set alert triggers and set those to open tickets when certain conditions are met, blah, blah, blah. We don't really need that, right? All I'm saying is we have folders that we can put in the portal to hold stuff. So again, as time goes on, right, whether I want to manually add those reports in here or set up my forwarding rule to the individual emails of the folder, I have those directly in here. And now what that starts to do is, again, as an account manager, I'm starting to do my sweeps before I do the QBR. So I check certain areas. I check how the reports are coming in. Any failures? Anything come up weird? Okay, maybe take note of that. Take a look at the policies, what needs to be addressed. Maybe we take a look at some of the assessments. Maybe we look at some of the dashboards. We just kind of brush over a lot of the stuff that is just naturally just living, breathing data in here. And where this starts to come together is the account manager is starting to build a path for conversation for the client. So again, before it's 1 in the afternoon, you got a meeting with them in an hour and you got to scramble to find out talking points. You're now starting to build your, what should I check? You're starting to build your usual kind of suspects. So next time when we talk about the grow phase, we're going to talk about how we're going to take all of these things and we're going to really focus on the account manager part and make that an actionable plan. So the sneak preview is that we're going to use this planner to build a roadmap, and we're going to build kind of a sensible plan for it. And what I had just talked about is kind of an additional cherry on top. So sneak preview for it, right? When you go to the planner, you're going to be presented initially with a lot of sample, or not sample, but core things. So this is ideally for your core services, core initiatives, security, or big projects, or anything like that. But all the things we just looked at and I briefly ran through, the more you set up in CloudRadial, the more you have to say to that client. So now instead of just pitching them security and saying we should do security because security is super important, which obviously it is, you can take the things you've been seeing in their environment and go, well, you know what, this is an issue and I want to make sure that we talk about this. So it doesn't have to be the day of, it can be weeks before, it can be months before. You can start to notate issues that you want to address now. So that starts to be something you can proactively put on the board and say, we should talk about this. And getting this ready, getting this process down on a client by client basis during the management phase makes it so you have a dedicated, easy path. So it doesn't matter if it's this client or another client, they have the same options to pick from. They may have completely different reports. They may have a different complete set of policies, but you have the same areas to check. So as far as the core theme of scalability today, that is where it all comes in. It starts to build that scalable path. So everyone has the same kind of things to do. They're repeatable and they're kind of something that is going to be able to be flexible enough to accommodate different clients. So again, we'll come back to this specific part, how to bring all of that together in the grow phase. So I think that we'll wrap it up for today because we talked about a lot of stuff. As usual, Safi, I leave you with a very generous 3 minutes and 15 seconds of questions. Let me know.
Thanks, Ricky. No, I think I've answered, everything as we've kind of gone along. I've actually kind of been able to keep up with it. So I feel pretty good about that. I've also had Jeff on the other side, so I could text him and say, okay, answer this for me. Cool. The big thing is, this is like, can you assign an endpoint to a user so that it's part of the report a problem? And, because it's a web portal, we don't do it from the portal, but if the client is using the desktop app, we link the workstation to the ticket. So that comes across.
Let me show you, because that's a really good question. We get that a lot where I see where you're coming from with it, where you obviously want to be able to quickly link what the issue is and who that is. And I have actually have the desktop application on one of my 20 screens. There it is. Yeah, so here is the desktop application pulled up here. And this one I think is this actual tenant right here. Or this is a synchro demo one, but that's okay. Same idea, right? This is running locally on a machine, and again, this is another one of the ways that you can deploy on CloudRadial. So again, for the sake of the webinar, obviously I'm doing the cloud-based one, but your traditional running out of the system tray where I right-click and do like submitted tickets and whatnot is certainly available. And whenever you submit from this, what Safi's talking about is this does capture data, right? So if I go to help and info, or about, sorry, it captures stuff like my serial, my model, and all that kind of stuff in here. And this is submitted with the ticket too. And one of the options that you have with ticket submissions through the desktop application, that based on info is always submitted with the ticket, but within the section for desktop application, there's actually an option to include diagnostic data and whatnot to it, which should have kind of like, I think it's like problem step, the equivalent of like a problem steps reported with a bunch of data of like where they were at and all that. So that can be helpful, but we can only really capture that if we're running on their machine at the time of ticket submission through this.
Okay, this might be taking us down another rabbit hole, but so had somebody, it's actually Henry Overton. Mm-hmm. Can we use ConnectWise resolution notes to auto-populate knowledge base articles, which I know the answer is no. But I said to him that they can be added in the FastPath ticketing area because you could have the knowledge base link there so that if somebody came in to search, you've got the approved places for them to search. And you may want to just vaguely go over that.
I don't know if that's accurate because to my knowledge, again, it may be, I actually have no idea what I'm talking about as far as ConnectWise stuff goes. Is that a publicly facing thing, Because the FastPath, what Safi's talking about, I guess for everyone's knowledge, is there's a search dialog up here, right? And this search dialog is actually extremely powerful. It's something that whenever you search for something, for example, Outlook, it will search the relevant resources within the portal. So it'll say, hey, Outlook problem, quick starts for Outlook, whatever. and it'll also do a web search for things. And you can define what it's searching for here. So in theory, what Safi you're going for, which I could be correct, is if you could add your ConnectWise library here to the search results, it would work. But I don't think it's publicly crawlable, so I don't think we can grab
Yeah, I thought that it was publicly crawlable, so that's why I answered. That's why I kind of pushed them into this fast path, place.
Right, and it may be,
So,
again, but that's another thing too. This happened a couple months ago too, where I had a customer that has his own knowledge base. And he has like his own website where he has a bunch of stuff and he runs like blog articles and whatnot. And that was something that he did because again, whenever you first set up the search module under partner and settings, right, by default it comes preset with I think one. So under account and branding at the top, there's a section to customize that fast path dialog over here, fast path. And you can define a search website or multiple search websites. He actually had it set to his own website. So when people typed in Outlook or something like that, or they typed in like building thing, it would show the web results from his website, which again, theoretically.
So Drea Kisting just wrote in and said, Manage allows you to create KBs from ticket resolutions that are then searchable by clients in the Manage portal. So if that's public facing, we could get to it, correct?
Yeah, it would be, but I think the Manage portal needs to be signed into.
Oh, okay. So I'm getting another one that says, ConnectWise knowledge base is built based on tickets, so it's not publicly crawlable. It contains private info for the client, and they'd have to be signed in. So
but that may be a thing for everyone else on this call. I mean, obviously that seems like it might just be an API call to do, because we've had that question a lot when it comes to KBs in general. A lot of people have the issue where they're like, cool, but I don't want to rebuild the entire library. So it's something we always think about, like, what's the path of least resistance? Is it creating them in here? Is it API pulling them from ConnectWise or wherever? Is it something else? So that's something that's like kind of an open conversation. We're by no means done just going, okay, this is a KB. We always are open to suggestions for what we should do with them.
Yeah, so it's on our radar, just know that. And then also, again, just a reminder to make sure that you go into our website. It's cloudradial.com/events and sign up for the next one, which is Grow. And I'm sure that we'll send out a link when we send the recording for this presentation out too. So you don't want to miss it. And then you can also go back to our YouTube channel to watch the others that Ricky has already done. And you can find them there with the documentation for LOMG too.
Yeah, well, I think it's good for today. I know I'm already running over webinar time, which is always good something. But thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I guess I'll catch you for the next one.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great day.